Hey, 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 we're back with another episode of the AC podcast. Let's go. We reloaded. Got a lot of stuff to get into as always. Like I said, we only talking playoff teams only from now on. So all you Broncos fans and Jets fans and Chargers fans, all you people like that, even you Patriots fans, Texans fans, we ain't talking about y'all teams anymore. Y'all had your opportunity, to be graced with the voice of AC and have your team talked about. But sorry, we're coming down to December football. You already know it's all about the playoffs, so we're going to be getting into a lot of stuff. Talk about this Monday Night Football game from last night. We're going to talk about this Colts-Packers game, getting some Chiefs-Raiders, some Steelers. Unfortunately, we got to talk about my Philadelphia Eagles because we're still leading the division at a pathetic, woeful 3-6-1. So that's dreadful. Ugh. And then what we're going to do. Oh, and the Titans-Ravens. Going to get to that as well. And then I'm going to give you my GM rankings of all 32 teams. So that's going to be interesting as well. I'm going to give you some minor reasons why. I'm not going to go into detail about every single thing, but you'll see. I got a lot for you guys. But let's just start with last night, the Bucs-Rams game. Obviously, when I had my guest IT on, who's a Bucs fan, I said the Rams were the biggest threat to the Bucs. I still believe that. Obviously, what I said last week when I called the Rams the best team in the NFC, don't know if I believe that quite as much now, but I can make a sound argument they're the best team in the NFC. I can make a sound argument. It's not a crazy idea, but when I'm looking at this game last night, Rams won it 27-24, obviously. Really interesting game. Really interesting how it played out across the board. I was shocked by a lot of things. The two most surprising things were that the Bucs didn't pressure Goff as much because he's been one of the worst quarterbacks under pressure, and they just didn't blitz him nearly enough. They didn't get pressure on him with 4. It was really disappointing. That was disappointing to see from Todd Bowles' defense. And then the other thing that shocked me was the Rams won this game throwing the ball 51 times. The Rams are built to run the ball, but they were going up against the number 1 rush defense and 20 carries for 37 yards on the night. Their leading rusher was Malcolm Brown, 3 carries for 20 yards. This was all types of bad as far as that's concerned for the Rams. But overall, they averaged 7 yards per pass play. Goff threw 2 interceptions. One of them was really bad. The other one was to a defensive lineman. Pretty efficient on third down, 8 of 15. Bucs were 7 of 14. Bucs are 0-1 on fourth down. That was no good. But the Rams won this game. Like I said, they won it on orthodox. Really, they're built to run this zone stretch play to get to the edges, but against the Bucs defense, that's really hard to do because they have sideline-to-sideline speed with Levante David and Devin White. So you're not really going to get to the edge on them much. They have too much speed in the middle of their defense for the Rams to run the type of running game that they want to run as far as their scheme is concerned. So I think, like I've been saying, the best way to attack the Bucs is up the middle. That's the best way to attack the Bucs is up the middle if you're going to run on them. So, but they didn't do nearly enough of that. They didn't run up the interior, and Ndamukong Suh did a good job as far as eating up space in the middle. But in the pass game, it just wasn't not really enamored with the Bucs pass defense. You just look at this. Cooper Kupp, 11 receptions for 145 yards, and then Robert Woods, 12 for 130. Like, my goodness. Carlton Davis and Jamel Dean and Murphy Bunting and these guys, like, my goodness, just talk about no defense whatsoever in the pass game, just all over you. Cooper Kupp on one play, crossed up. Carlton Davis so bad. It was just, goodness. And Jamel Dean, this guy's just a weak spot in the secondary. We've seen it since the Giants game when Jason Garrett was attacking him and Daniel Jones just couldn't connect on any of the plays, double moves. Throws right down the field on Jamel Dean in breaking route. They just couldn't catch him. The Giants, they're just not a team like that. But Jared Goff is a really good quarterback, and he capitalized on Jamel Dean a lot, obviously. We saw the play with Van Jefferson catch a touchdown on him. I don't know what Jamel Dean was doing on that play. He just sold out outside like he had inside help, and he didn't. He was flat-footed, and he just gave up the inside. Technique was poor, lined up in press and didn't press Van Jefferson either, who's a rookie. Just not overly impressive. Not overly impressed with what I've seen from Jamel Dean this season. I know he's better than that though. He's better than what he's shown the last few weeks, but he's clearly been struggling because a lot of teams have been targeting him and whatnot. Carlton Davis has been shadowing number one receivers for the most part, even in the slot. So, Carlton Davis is obviously taking his game up a notch. And Sean Murphy Bunting, he's not a bad corner either, but Jamel Dean, he is the guy that you want to target in their secondary. So that's that. Getting to the Bucs on the offensive side of the ball, Tom Brady, just 54% of your passes completed, just pathetic. It was just not a good day for Tom Brady. Second half, the Bucs offense was rendered ineffective other than the one interception Jared Goff threw where the Bucs capitalized on a short field and scored a touchdown. But other than that, the Bucs, they just didn't. Tom Brady just couldn't do much of anything. 1-9 for 18 yards on throws, 15 plus yards down the field. The 2 interceptions that were overthrows, really bad. It should have had 3 interceptions. John Johnson dropped an interception on a deep throw to Mike Evans. The running game, the Bucs, 18 carries for 42 yards, just not good enough. Leonard Fournette, 3 drops. He's in there on pass protection or on passing downs because he's good in in picking up blitzes and pass protection. But yesterday he was running routes and he dropped 3 passes. Just no faith in him. Just keep in Rojo or get in Keyshawn Vaughn. Leonard Fournette, he's a one-trick pony as far as I'm concerned. Ronald Jones, he should be the lead back. I don't know why he was even splitting the majority of the load with him, and we don't know what the Bucs have in Keyshawn Vaughn because they're not playing him. LaShawn McCoy, he's just taking up a roster spot just because, I guess. So there's that. But overall, I just don't like what I'm seeing from the Bucs. It's that they're built to pass the ball, but if they can't pass it, it seems like they can't really do anything. Yeah, sure, they beat up on these weaker teams, but teams that are balanced on both sides of the ball, they haven't been able to beat. I throw out the Bears game because that was due mostly to penalties, but even then, they only scored 19 points in that game. You look at the Saints game, they scored 3, then they got beat down. And then you look at this game, they scored 24, but it wasn't really a meaningful 24 to me. It was a struggle for most of the game for them to score. And so I'm just looking at it. I think you can physically beat up on the Bucs on the defensive side of the ball if you take away the running game and you make them throw it. Sometimes you can just render them ineffective. Tom Brady, just 48 throws, just only 216 yards. Like, what is that? This is why I said that I felt like the Rams were, the team that can match up well with the Bucs because they can run the ball. Obviously, that wasn't the case yesterday, like I said. And their defense is elite, and they can match up man for man with the Bucs receivers. Jalen Ramsey was shadowing Mike Evans. Darius Williams was shadowing, for the most part, Antonio Brown. And then Troy Hill was on Chris Godwin. And, for the most part, like, those guys did a good job. If I had to pick who won that matchup, it was the Rams secondary who won that matchup. So, I feel comfortable in saying that, the Bucs or the Rams, they can match up well with the Bucs. And then, the middle of their defense is pretty strong. Obviously, they got Aaron Donald on the interior on the defensive line, and Michael Brockers is no slouch. They still don't have Dante Fowler back yet. Leonard Floyd's a former first-round pick. Kaiser and these dudes in the middle, they can do some things. And so, they're no slouches on defense. And so I feel like that's the best way to beat the Bucs is, running it, defense, targeting Jamel Dean. And so, from the Bucs standpoint, I really don't know what you do. I mean, they're built to throw the ball. The Bucs aren't going to be successful running the ball unless they're playing mediocre competition. But we're talking about the best teams in the NFC. Like, yeah, you can run all over the Panthers. You can run all over, the Chargers and people like that. But against some of these other top tier teams, you're going to have to be able to, manufacture some running game. And I just don't know how I just don't know how the Bucs are going to do it. I mean, you can throw to set up the run, but the Bucs offensive line, they're just not imposing in any facet of the game. They're just not imposing to me. They're very inconsistent as far as run blocking. And like I said, they do it against teams that they clearly have the advantage against in the run game. It's not even like they can impose. They haven't imposed their will on the Saints as far as running the ball. They didn't do it against the Rams. And they didn't do it against the Bears. So against the elite competition, the Bucs, they've just folded too many times. It's hard for me to believe in that. in the playoffs. But I believe in Tom Brady. I believe they can figure out some way to get this fixed. But I also have to remember this. The Bruce Arians offense isn't built on running the ball. It's built on throwing it. And you see all Tom Brady's passes, all his picks came on throws 15 plus yards down the field, throwing it deep. So this is the offense that, Bruce Arians runs. There's not a lot of short routes, although they did do some stuff yesterday when the Rams were playing zone coverage. But for the most part, it's, a lot of deep throws, a lot of intermediate throws, and that's how Bruce Arians operates. So I give the Rams a lot of credit for what they did. Just, not overly enamored by what the Bucs did on any front. I wasn't really impressed by anything that they did by any stretch of the imagination. So they've got a lot of things to clean up, and they've got to figure out this primetime thing because it's just not good. It's just not good they keep losing games in primetime. So that's that. Moving on to this Colts-Packers game. This was a really good game. Two teams, 6-3 versus 6-3 versus 7-2. Really impressive matchup between these two teams. Obviously, the Colts won at 34-31. Very impressive quarterback play from both sides. Aaron Rodgers, 27-38, 311 yards, 3 touchdowns, and interception. And then Phillip Rivers, 24-36, 288 yards, 3 touchdowns, and an interception. Very impressive, but the difference in this game was the running game. The team that ran the ball better won this game, and that's where the difference was made, honestly, if I'm being totally honest. And this was my worry with the Packers when I called them finesse for my one word last week on the AC podcast last week. Finesse. Because Arizona Cardinals. Because the Green Bay Packers, they're a team that you can run on. They have a good pass rush with Preston Smith and Zadarius Smith. They have good coverage in the back end. Jair Alexander, I like Darnell Savage, Adrian Amos, Kevin King, and these boys. I like them. But man, they just cannot stop the run. 37 attempts for 140 yards on the day for the Indianapolis Colts. They were just physically imposing their will, and if not for a bunch of penalties at one point, I'm not sure this game gets to overtime. I don't think that it does. And so you're just looking at this from the Packers' perspective, and yes, they can throw the ball. Devontae Adams, Valdez-Scantling, Tanyan, Alan Lazard, when he starts getting a little more healthy down the stretch, they can throw the ball, no doubt. But the running game, as far as the Green Bay Packers is concerned, I get the Colts are the number 2 run defense. So Aaron Jones, 10 carries for 41 yards. But it's not nearly enough for a guy that Aaron Jones is one of the best backs in the league. Like, you only gave him 10 runs, and you were up by 14, 28-14 at one point. Now, there was a questionable pass interference near the end of the half of Rock Ya-Sin against Marquez Valdez-Scantling that I just didn't love, that set the Green Bay Packers up for an easy gimme touchdown by the refs. So I did not love that at all, that pass interference. But needless to say, it was they were up 14 coming out of the half, and for whatever reason, I don't know what Matt LaFleur was doing, but he wasn't running Aaron Jones. He was relying on Aaron Rodgers' arm, and this is the questionable stuff this is the stuff that you come to that's questionable as far as Matt LaFleur. And he comes from the Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay tree as far as running the ball and play action. And for whatever reason, they only ran the ball 18 times and they had a 14-point lead. That doesn't make any sense to me. That doesn't make any sense. But when you look at this from the Colts' perspective, this defense, it's ferocious. It's legit. Let's make no mistake about it. This defense, it is legit. They can do anything. They can rush the passer. They can cover in space. Their secondary is opportunistic. This defense, they forced 4 turnovers, interception, 3 fumbles recovered. This defense, they can do some things. They're special, for sure, no doubt. This defense is special, no doubt. I have the utmost faith in this defense. DeForest Buckner, that trading a first-round pick for him has paid dividends. Obviously, Kenny Moore is one of the best slot corners in the league. Darius Leonard. This guy, Julian Blackmon, a third-round pick, he's a stud. He looks nice. At safety, Justin Houston's got valuable experience. You already know how I feel about Anthony Walker, a steal in the 5th round. I mean, the Colts defense, it's just deep and it's just athletic. It's, fast, disciplined at all 3 levels, and I love what I'm seeing from their defense. But Phillip Rivers, he's doing some impressive things as well. I give him a lot of credit. Hasn't been the greatest season for him, but not the worst. Not terrible. He's definitely, toned down the turnovers a lot from last year, obviously, when he was second or third in the league in turnovers for a QB as far as interceptions are concerned. But overall, the Colts, they're 7-3. They're in prime position to win this division, and they have a big game coming up against Tennessee. So that's going to be something that we look to going forward. But the Colts, they're a well-balanced team. They can score. They can stop the run. They can defend the pass. They can take the ball away. And those are all key ingredients for a playoff team. So I give them a lot of credit for what they've done. And we're going to see where that takes them. But I got to keep going. I'm not going to spend too long on the Steelers game. They weren't really playing a team this week. They're playing the Jacksonville Jaguars 1-8. Didn't really expect much from this game. Didn't really learn much other than, Pittsburgh has the best defense in the league. That's the one thing that I know. 4 interceptions on the day, obviously leading the league in takeaways. Minkah Fitzpatrick is a top 3 safety in the league. I'm not going to go, out on a crazy limb and say he's the best, but he's top 3 for sure. Easy. Top 3 safety, strong or free. I don't care. He's top 3. You're not naming 3 safeties better than Minkah Fitzpatrick as far as I'm concerned. This guy's always in the right place at the right time. He's saved a lot of plays in a lot of games this year. And he was well worth the first round pick that I knew that he was worth when we traded for him last year from the Miami Dolphins. So this guy, he's just something special. He means everything to this defense to me. Him and, to a lesser degree, Devin Bush, those 2 dudes, they're everything to the Pittsburgh Steelers defense. I'm sorry, they just are. And TJ Watt. Those 3 guys, they're everything to this Pittsburgh Steelers defense as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, the Pittsburgh Steelers, they obviously have the best edge rusher in football in TJ Watt. I don't care what anyone says. You can talk about Joey Bosa. You can talk about Myles Garrett. But look up TJ Watt's stats. Look at him play. This guy is the best edge rusher in football. He's better than Khalil Mack. He's better than Von Miller. He's better than Myles Garrett, Joey Bosa, Nick Bosa. I don't care who it is. TJ Watt's the best edge rusher in football. And the Steelers have the best edge rusher in football, Bud Dupree on the other side, producing as well. Then you talk about Cameron Hayward and Stephon Tuitt up front. These boys, they just get after you. You got 3 Pittsburgh Steelers in the top 5 in quarterback pressure this year. Obviously, TJ Watt's at the top, and then you have Stephon Tuitt and Bud Dupree trailing behind him, obviously. And then you have Aaron Donald and Shaq Barrett and sandwiched in between. But overall, yeah, there's that. Obviously, they dominated this game, like I said. And then you look at the offensive side of the ball. Just the array of weapons that the Steelers have, it's just so impressive. And that's what I love about this team is this pass catching group is is the youngest in the league. You got Juju Smith-Schuster. You got Deontay Johnson, who's coming into his own, leading the league in receiving yards the last 2 weeks. He had 12 receptions for 111 yards this week against the Jags. Then you talk about Chase Claypool. He's a touchdown machine. And then you talk about James Washington, who can make some plays as well. Then, Ray McLeod can, do some things on jet sweeps and, misdirection and whatnot. And then, the tight ends, Vance McDonald's coming back. Eric Ebron is a good tight end, obviously. And then, we got Big Ben Roethlisberger at the command center. He's just making things happen. Obviously, he's looking like an MVP candidate. Comeback player of the year definitely is what he is probably going to get. Unless, the NFL just, gift wraps it to Alex Smith for, what he's done, which isn't much. I get the fact that he's came back from the injury, but it's a production award. And I think Ben Roethlisberger is the leading candidate for it, or he should be. But we'll see, like I said. But when you look at it, Mike Tomlin's doing a great job coaching and whatnot. The only problem I have with the Pittsburgh Steelers right now, which they got back on track this week, was the running game. 27 carries for 106 yards overall, so better than what we've done the last 3-4 weeks as far as the running game. But more so, I'm just not enamored with the schematics. Like I said, this is the part where the coaching comes into question as far as the offensive coordinator. And I'm just not enamored with how he's using James Conner. Not nearly enough use for Anthony McFarland. Yeah, I'm just not enamored by the overall schematics of the running game as far as getting to the edge, as far as, the power schemes and the gap schemes, the inside zone schemes. The Steelers, they have an array of running plays in their in their playbook, but they just used them wrong, or they used the wrong player. Like they try to get James Conner to run on the edge instead of a guy like Anthony McFarland, who actually has speed for an outside zone play. It's stuff like that when I'm talking about schematics. And so, you know, and even with stuff like that, the Steelers are more of like a zone blocking team than a power run team too, as well, because they're not really physically imposing and blocking dudes man on man in front of them. They haven't done that well this year. So that's what I mean as far as schematics. But other than that, the Steelers are 10-0. Nothing really to complain about. They're a Super Bowl contender, as we already know. People can say, oh, they're just winning close games. They're not beating anybody down. Well, they beat down the Jaguars. They beat down the Bengals. They beat down the Browns. They beat the 5-0 Titans, beat the 1-loss Ravens at the time, beat the 1-loss Browns at the time. So they beat in quality competition, as far as I'm concerned. So anyone that wants to question the Steelers and what they've done this season as far as beating quality competition, they beat in quality competition. So there's that. But like I said, I don't want to spend too long on them. There's not really much to talk about. I don't even want to talk about the Eagles. I'm going to get to them last. They don't deserve. They deserve last, because that's what they are right now. Last. Get to the Chiefs-Raiders game. This game showed me a lot of concerning stuff as far as the Chiefs are concerned. Y'all already know how I feel about my man Ferrari Mahomes. This dude's just something special. Was there any doubt when this man got the ball with 1:15 left that he was going to win this game? Nope, not none. Kansas City's 9-1, obviously, but the toughest games that the team that's played the Chiefs the toughest is the Raiders, and the Raiders, they can beat the Chiefs. That's what worries me. They can beat the Chiefs. They have the ingredients, they have the formula. They just have the Chiefs number as far as the Chiefs defense, because the Chiefs defense, man, oh my gosh. Just Derek Carr just not even sacked, had a 95 QBR, just like what? Where is Chris Jones and Frank Clark? C. Spagnuolo, where's the blitzing? Just anything. The Raiders, they're, like I said, they're a blue collar team and they can run the ball effectively. Didn't run Josh Jacobs nearly enough, only 17 carries for 55 yards. They probably should have ran it a little bit more. Excuse me, but you look at the Chiefs, everything hinges upon Patrick Mahomes' arm, and obviously Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill both went over 100 yards in this game. Marcus Robinson just, where's Mecole Hardman? I can't with DeMarcus Robinson. It seems like that was the Raiders' plan, was to take away Travis Kelce and Tyreek and funnel everything to DeMarcus Robinson. This guy has some questionable hands. Like, he caught 6 for 44, but one play he should have came back to the quarterback and forced Patrick Mahomes to throw an interception. And the other one he dropped like, DeMarcus Robinson, he's not really a threat. Mecole Hardman, only one catch for 16 yards. Marcus Robinson obviously isn't the game breaker that Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill, or Mecole Hardman is, which is why I can see the Raiders' defensive game plan being funnel everything to DeMarcus Robinson and let him catch the ball and let him make plays, because number one, he has questionable hands, and number two, he's not explosive. So there's that. But if you're the Raiders, you have to feel comfortable about your chances to beat the Kansas City Chiefs if you see them in the playoffs, because you can run it on them. You can throw it on them. You have big play ability with Darren Waller, who's a top 3 tight end. Hunter Renfrow can do some things. Obviously, Henry Ruggs, caught 2 catches for 119 yards the last time they dropped 41 on the Kansas City Chiefs. And Nelson Aguilar, he's having a resurgence in Las Vegas. So, I'm really concerned if the Raiders can figure out some things on defense, that they can really pose a serious threat to, the Kansas City Chiefs, as far as I'm concerned. The Chiefs, they got to figure out some stuff on defense side. I don't like what I'm seeing. There's just too many weak links as far as the linebacker position and pass and run fits. Secondary, L'Jarius Sneed was doing some things, but, he hasn't been back, or he hasn't gotten back to his outside role just yet. Then you're talking about Daniel Sorensen. He's a weak spot. You're talking about Charvarius Ward and Bashaud Breeland. They're all right. They're not bad, but they're nothing like to brag about either. I trust Tyrann Mathieu and Juan Thornhill on the back end, but the Chiefs, they need some more pass rush, and I don't know if they're playing William Gay Jr. in the middle from Mississippi State, the draft pick the guy that they chose, I believe, in the 2nd or 3rd round, but he's the only hope for the middle of their defense because he's a guy who can run sideline to sideline, has some coverage ability, and obviously can hit the run pretty well. So that's the only hope I believe they have in the middle of the defense is getting him some experience before playoff time because I'm just worried about their linebacker spot and pass coverage and run fits. It's just very concerning to me. So there's that. Moving on to the Ravens-Tennessee game. Obviously, Tennessee won this game in overtime, 30-24. Ravens are trending in the wrong direction. I like Lamar Jackson a lot. I really do. But the Ravens passing attack is just non-existent. Unless they throw the ball to Mark Andrews, there's really nothing. There's really nothing here. I mean, they spent a first-round pick on Marquise Brown, 3 targets, no catches, no yards. They're not even featuring this guy in the passing game. And Lamar, 17 to 29, 186 yards. Like, this is terrible across the board. This just doesn't look good. Like, yeah, the Ravens are tops in the league in rushing, but they're one of the worst passing offenses. And you're not going to win a Super Bowl without being able to throw the ball, especially on third down. And the Baltimore Ravens, they leave a lot to be desired. They're stout everywhere else, but they can't throw the football consistently. If you can't do that, you're not beating the Chiefs. We've already seen that. You've lost to the Titans. Like, this has been the Achilles heel of the Baltimore Ravens since they've had Lamar Jackson, not being able to throw the football. Because in the playoffs, you're going to have to be able to throw it. I know people talk about, running games travel, passing games don't. But we've seen the last 2 years with Lamar Jackson against the Chargers, and then last year against the Titans that Lamar couldn't throw the ball, and we saw what happened. So either the Ravens are going to have to revolutionize or evolve their passing game, and Lamar's going to have to get he's going to have to get better as a thrower because this is not working. This is not working with what they're doing right now. They're good rushing the ball. Lamar is a product of that, but Lamar's got to develop he's got to be able to throw the ball 30 to 35 times a game, and he just can't do that consistently. He can't. He does not look the same as his MVP season, and it is what it is for the Baltimore Ravens right now. They're trending in the wrong direction. Their defense is obviously still elite. They can run the ball effectively, but they've got to seriously fix this passing game because it's not working right now. I don't know if they got to bring in some assistants or different quarterbacks, coach, or whatever, but they got some things to figure out. As far as the Tennessee Titans are concerned, obviously this is an impressive win for them. 7-3 keeps them in the playoff hunt. Sets up a big matchup between them and the Colts next Sunday. They're both 7-3, and whoever wins this game is most likely going to take control of the division and most likely win the division. But you look at Ryan Tannehill, 259 yards throwing, 22-31. Darren Carey was held in check for most of this game. He only had about 40 or so yards through 3 quarters, and then in the fourth quarter and overtime, he really took over and obviously won the game on that last run from about 25 to 30 yards out. But overall, I like, but I don't love the Titans. Still the worst third down defense in the league. Really dependent upon, Derrick Henry and the running game and play action pass. They can come back on a team like the Baltimore Ravens because they can't throw the ball. So, there's that. But we've already seen against Pittsburgh. We've seen, even Kansas City last year. We've seen in some of the Tennessee's other games. Buffalo, I believe they got beat up on. Never mind. Tennessee beat up on Buffalo. But their losses to the Steelers, the Colts, and the Bengals, those are teams that can throw the football pretty effectively. Obviously, the Steelers probably throw the ball the best out of those 3 teams. But, yeah, I just worry about the Titans being able to throw the ball without play action. And they did that this game, but obviously Lamar Jackson, the Ravens are a similar style. They run the ball and play action off of it. They're not a drop-back team, and so there's that. But overall, Titans are in a good spot at 7-3. Ravens are slipping at 6-4, and they play the Steelers on Thanksgiving. And if that game, stands as it is, obviously the Ravens have had some positive COVID tests, but if that game remains as played on Thanksgiving, Steelers can bury the Ravens at 6-5, and it can be an uphill battle for them as far as making the playoffs. But that's that. But let's get to my last team, my woeful, dreadful Philadelphia Eagles, sitting here at 3-6-1, lost to Cleveland, obviously, 22-17. This is just a bad football team overall. Penalties early in the game. Carson Wentz sacked 5 times, and Myles Garrett wasn't even playing. Olivier Vernon got 3 sacks, and Jason Peters, he needs to take off the Eagles uniform and take his behind home, because he's done. Giving up sacks in 3-man protection, giving up sacks where they double team Olivier Vernon and chip him with a tight end, and you still give up a sack. This is just a joke of a team overall. Carson Wentz threw 2 interceptions, and, while I can make the argument that they weren't his fault, I really don't care at this point. You're turning the ball over. It really doesn't matter at this point. You're leading the league in turnovers, so we don't care about context at this point, honestly. You just need to stop turning the ball over. But, the Eagles, this is the biggest... It's the coaching, it's the quarterback, it's the defense. Like, even when the defense played good, they gave up scoring drives immediately after the Eagles score so that they don't play complimentary football. Miles Sanders fumbles on the first possession where the Eagles are going to score a touchdown, it looks like. And then, their next possession, Carson Wentz throws a pick six. So your 2 best players on offense cost you points and give the other team points. Alshon Jeffrey, he can't even get up off the ground on the second interception. Travis Fulgham, he's, regressed to the mean. 1 catch for 8 yards in back-to-back games. 1 catch for 8 yards against the Giants. 1 catch for 8 yards against the Browns. So, he is what he is. He's a practice squad call-up. Greg Ward, 3 receptions for 9 yards. Like, oh my gosh, this is so disgraceful. This is so disgraceful. This team they're just bad everywhere. There's nothing. There's just nothing with this team. This team does not deserve to make the playoffs. They shouldn't want to make the playoffs. And the biggest indicator of it all is this. Doug Peterson says that the Eagles aren't going to bench Carson Wentz for Jalen Hurts because that would indicate that the season's over. So basically, Jalen Hurts isn't good and he's not ready to play. And he's the backup. So if Carson Wentz for some reason gets injured or whatnot, there's no hope that Jalen Hurts can do anything meaningful and show any promise for why you took him as a second-round pick. So you're basically admitting that you wasted a second-round pick. At this point, it's fair to question a whole bunch of stuff about this team, but this team this is a dysfunctional organization right now. That's the realization I've come to. I hate to say it. It hurts a lot. But this is a dysfunctional organization on so many levels. The GM, the coaching, the quarterback. It's all failing right now. All three pillars that you need to have a successful organization and compete for a Super Bowl, they're all failing for the Philadelphia Eagles right now. Carson Wentz, he's playing like the worst quarterback in the league. Doug Peterson, your last 2 weeks on third down, you're 2 for 21. So your team's ill prepared and they're committing penalties. And you're saying this stuff is going to get cleaned up and it's not being cleaned up. We're hearing about sloppy practice habits. We're hearing about, just an array of things. And the GM, of course, I need not even get into the litany of picks and free agent decisions that he's completely missed on. It's a disgrace across the board. This organization is not a functional franchise right now. And they're stealing the joy out of the city. The Eagles fans have nothing to look forward to as far as the holidays are concerned. This team, their season is over. There's nothing to hope for right now, unless the GM gets fired. But what are we to believe? Why would we believe that he is? His job's probably the safest in the organization for no apparent reason. It's like I said before when I called this team the Philadelphia football team. The first person that's going to be gone is Doug if this operation doesn't get fixed. But the first person that should be gone is Howie Roseman. But as of right now, we know that's not going to happen. So, sadly, this trend is going to continue and continue and continue until Howie is the person that's fired, which he should have been fired a long time ago. But, the Super Bowl bought him some leeway. But since then, he hasn't done anything meaningful. He's done nothing as far as gaining franchise pillars for this team, and it's shown. And so It's just a mess across the board. I give the Cleveland Browns a lot of credit. They ran the ball, stuck to it, ran it effectively. Baker Mayfield didn't have to do much. He was basically a game manager, only completing 12 out of 22 passes. Nick Chubb got 100 yards rushing. Kareem Hunt ran in for a touchdown. You know, Cleveland Browns, they're obviously trending upwards and they're doing the right things. And, you know, they're a playoff team right now. So there's that. It's just hard to talk about this team. It's just hard to talk about the Eagles. You know, they don't run the ball nearly enough, even though that's what's working for them. They run the ball 16 times with Miles Sanders, but 14 of those carries were in the first half, and then the other 2 were in the second half. It's like, what are you doing? And this game was close the whole way. It wasn't like it was a blowout. This game was close the whole time, and Doug Pearson just refuses to run the ball, even though that's the only thing the Eagles can seem to do well because their passing game is relatively pathetic. So, and then the Jalen Hurts plays, everyone knows every time he comes in, it's a read option, so it's predictable. There's no creativity in using him like a quote-unquote Taysom Hill type player. So there's that. There's just no imagination with this offense, no creativity. There's no fun anywhere. The Eagles don't do anything well. They don't rush the passer well. They don't take the ball away well. They don't throw the ball well. They don't run the ball well, even though, because they don't run it enough, that's why they don't run the ball well. There's just nothing here. There's nothing. I just don't know what you do, but it is what it is. I'm done with the Philadelphia Eagles. I hope they lose the rest of their games. I know that's crazy to say as a fan, but that's where I'm at. Like, they play the Seattle Seahawks coming up on Monday Night Football, then they play the Packers, then they play the Saints, then they play the Cardinals, and then you finish up with the Cowboys and the Washington Football Team. Like, the only realistic wins you have on that schedule are the Washington Football Team and Dallas. The 2 teams that are in your division, which is the historically worst division in the league, through 10 games. Like, the Eagles, despite me saying all this, they're still in first place in the division at 3-6-1. This is disgraceful. It's just disgraceful across the board. So there's that. But I want to transition to something I've never done before, but I felt like it was, necessary just to highlight, things, because some teams, they have good GMs. They deserve credit. Because I've been talking about the Eagles GM a lot, and I feel like, I need to highlight teams that have good GMs to show you, what good GMing looks like. It's like I said, I'm not going to go into depth and detail about every single thing that teams have done, but I'm just going to highlight, some major points for all these teams and whatnot. So I've done these GM rankings into tiers. So tier 1 is obviously the elite tier. Tier 2, good, not great. Tier 3 is average, and tier 4 is just awful. I will add the caveat that some teams have stars next to them. Those teams are the ones that have the opportunity to move themselves into the next tier. So, I say we're just going to get started. So in tier 1, first team I have is the Chiefs. Obviously, they've won the Super Bowl. Obviously, a lot of them being in tier 1 factors into the fact that they have Patrick Mahomes, but they've also drafted well. They've had the most Pro Bowlers over the last decade drafted. Chris Jones is good. Acquired Frank Clark, Tyrann Mathieu, Juan Thornhill in the draft. I give them a lot of credit for the organization that they've built and the culture that they've established. So, obviously, getting Sammy Watkins, Tyreek Hill, Mecole Hardman in the 3rd round, that's a good value pickup as well. Clyde Edwards-Helaire in this draft. Found a starting corner in L'Jarius Sneed in this class as well. So they're in tier 1. Next team is the Ravens. Obviously, Lamar Jackson. We can't ignore that. Bringing in Mark Ingram. Obviously, drafting their O-line. We're talking about Ronnie Stanley and Orlando Brown at the tackle spots. We're talking about getting Marcus Peters for basically nothing. We're talking about drafting Marlon Humphrey. We're talking about getting Patrick Queen. They got Earl Thomas. It was a good signing, even though it didn't pan out, but I still give them credit for that. getting Calais Campbell for basically nothing, even trading for Yannick Ngakoue, basically getting him for nothing. Like, the Ravens, they've done a lot of special stuff as far as their roster's concerned. I like the Marquise Brown drafting. They've done a lot of impressive stuff. Then we get to the Colts. Looking at what they've done mostly in the draft. Obviously acquiring Phillip Rivers and the fact that they're 7-3, they deserve a lot of credit for that. Even though I'm not a big fan of Phillip Rivers, but he's playing good football right now. Then you talk about the Jordan Wilkins and Jonathan Taylors, Michael Pittmans in the second and third rounds. And we talk about getting Quentin Nelson. We talk about getting Braden Smith. We talk about Okurwe. Anthony Walker is a starting linebacker. He's a 5th round pick. We talk about this kid, Julian Blackman. He was a 3rd round pick this year. We talk about getting Xavier Rose in free agency. That signing has panned out as far as their secondary is concerned. So this is just a deep roster across the board, obviously, so they deserve a lot of credit as well. Then we get to the 49ers. Obviously, they were in the Super Bowl last year. D-line was one of the best in the league, obviously built over the years through first-round picks. Eric Armstead, Nick Bosa and the crew up front with DeForest Buckner, even though they traded him for a first-round pick and replaced him with Javon Kinlaw. And then they got Brandon Ayuk, who looks like a stud, he looks like he's going to be a stud. Deebo Samuel, he's good. We're looking at, their running back room that was built of basically, mid-round guys and, undrafted free agents like Matt Breida and, Raheem Mostert and guys like that. And then you talk about getting Jimmy Garoppolo, who allowed them to get to the Super Bowl and whatnot. And then you talk about getting Richard Sherman in free agency. So the 49ers, I put them up there with the elites. And then the Saints. And what really put the Saints here is that 2017 draft where they got Ryan Ramczyk, Marshawn Lattimore, Alvin Kamara, Marcus Williams, and Alex Anzalone. But even then, Marcus Davenport is good. Trey Hendrickson is good. Obviously, we're talking about the Saints. Cameron Jordan's on this team, even though he's been on this team for a while. But even the drafting of Michael Thomas and whatnot, the Saints know what they're doing, and they're aggressive in their approach and getting players that fit their, their mold and whatnot. So I give them a lot of credit, and so I put them as the last team in that tier 1 tier. Now we get to the tier 2 tier of GMs. So I have the Rams and the Steelers with stars next to them, so that would, mean they're borderline tier 1. But they're in tier 2. Rams, obviously, they've been to a Super Bowl. They're aggressive about how they approach things. I like their approach. They acquired Jalen Ramsey. Obviously, they had Sammy Watkins, Brandon Cooks for a while. Cooper Kupp was a good addition in the draft. Let's see, what else have they done? They signed Andrew Whitworth a couple years back. Obviously, getting Jared Goff and going to the Super Bowl, that matters. And then, being competitive after that, because a lot of teams have Super Bowl hangover. So they've remained competitive despite their down year last year being 9-7. Like, they were still a pretty good team. You look at that. Then you look at players like John Johnson, Darius Williams. They had Aqib Talib at one point, obviously, and Nico Roby Coleman was a good slot corner for them for a while, so I give them credit for those things. And even Todd Gurley, they knew when to get rid of him, so I give them a lot of credit for that. Then you get to the Bills, Tremaine Edmonds and Matt Milano. Those are good additions. Obviously, the trade for Stephon Diggs is panning out. I give them a lot of credit for, what they've done as far as developing Josh Allen. So the fact that he looks good makes the GM look good. Getting Tre'Davious White and him being one of the best corners in the league matters. Using getting guys like Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde, and turning them into Pro Bowl caliber players matters as well. And even a guy that's undrafted free agent like Levi Wallace, I give them credit for that as well. And so when you look up and down their roster, and then value signs like John Brown and Cole Beasley, those have panned out for them as well. And so I give the Bills a lot of credit. Also the Cardinals. And the Cardinals, they're an interesting team that you might wonder why is on here, but I give the GM a lot of credit for admitting it was a mistake drafting Josh Rosen and admitting that mistake, getting rid of him immediately, and getting Kyler Murray. That's a big reason for why I have the Cardinals in tier 2, because that's not an easy thing to do, and a lot of GMs, they would just stick to their pride and their ego and not make a decision like that. But the Cardinals, got rid of him, so I give the credit a lot of credit for that. They got Kyler Murray, DeAndre Hopkins, traded for Kenyon Drake. That's a good deal, obviously, that's worked out. Isaiah Simmons, I like that pick, even though they haven't used him as much. What else have the Cardinals done that's meaningful? Budda Baker signing, that's big. That's very big as well. Getting Jordan Hicks to solidify the middle of their defense, that's, a big deal as well. Getting, Chandler Jones isn't really something I'm factoring in because I'm only doing like the last 3 or so years, but he's still a good player. But yeah, a lot of this, even like getting someone like Christian Kirk, that matters. Andy Isabella in like the 3rd, 4th, 5th round, that matters as well. So I give them a lot of credit. I have the Dolphins on here in tier 2 as well, mostly because of the fact that they're ahead of schedule this year. Like Tua, he looks good, even though he got benched. I like what they've done as far as like Christian Wilkins, getting Byron Jones, re-signing Xavier Howard, getting guys like Kyle Van Noy that fit the system, getting Emmanuel Ogbah, who's one of the top sackers this year. So I give the Dolphins a lot of credit for the operation that they're building and what they're doing. Cowboys, even though it hasn't translated on the field, you got to give the Cowboys a lot of credit for their talent evaluating. Got CeeDee Lamb, Michael Gallup, trade a first for Amari Cooper, which panned out. Obviously, DeMarcus Lawrence. They had Byron Jones, even though they didn't re-sign him. So that knocks them down a notch from tier 1 to tier 2. That's why I didn't have them in tier 1, although I did consider it. Obviously, Zeke, one of the best backs in the league, despite him having a down year. Getting Dak in the 4th round is a big part of this as well. Dak's one of the best quarterbacks in the league. What else do I have for the Cowboys? Even someone like Tony Pollard, I consider that a good value pick as well. And so, I give them a lot of credit. They're in tier 2 as well. The Browns, I have them in tier 2. Not really really they're in tier 2 and not tier 1 because of the Baker Mayfield thing. Because Baker Mayfield is not a franchise quarterback, drafted number 1 overall. But I look at guys like Denzel Ward, he's good. Myles Garrett's one of the best edge rushers in the league. You get Nick Chubb in the 2nd round. You sign Kareem Hunt for basically nothing. You get Jack Conklin, Jedrick Wills. You trade a first for Odell Beckham. You got Jarvis Landry. You got Austin Hooper in this year's free agency. Even someone like Hunter Bryant, he looks like he can be something, a good number 2 tight end, potentially. Guys like Ronnie Harrison, that's a good value signing. Getting Greedy Williams when you did, and then even Grant Delpit, even though he's injured, I like those picks as well. And so I think that's a good, those were good moves by them. Then I look at the Chargers. I put them in tier 2 as well. And some people might be shocked by that, but Derwin James, even though he hasn't played, he's one of the best safeties in the league when he is playing, so I give them a lot of credit for that. Obviously, Justin Herbert factors a lot into this, but even guys like Melvin Ingram, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, having those guys, even Hunter Henry, that was a good, draft pick. And then Joey Bosa, of course, you got to factor that in. And then you think of signing guys like Chris Harris, keeping guys like Casey Hayward as far as free agent signings and whatnot. And then trading Desmond King. Obviously, they weren't going to be able to keep him, so trading him and getting something back for him was a good move. And then you look at, just guys like Austin Eckler as far as their running game, and then like Forrest Lamp on their offensive line. I put them in the tier 2 category as well, which might be a shock to some people, but I think the Chargers have, their tier 2 front office as far as GM and talent evaluating. So there's that. Oh, and they got Kenneth Murray also. I like that pick as well. Now we get to tier 3. We look at the Raiders and the Bucks. Teams that I have starred in this are the Raiders, the Bucks, the Panthers, and the Titans. So the Raiders, I actually had doubts about John Gruden and Mike Mayock, but they've done a good job of building this team, getting guys like Josh Jacobs, Jonathan Abram, getting Corey Littleton in free agency, Trevon Mullen, and Damon Arnett for their young secondary. But I don't like picks like Cleveland Farrell. I feel like that was a reach. I like the Henry Ruggs draft pick. They obviously got guys like Colton Miller, I believe, up front. They've got a pretty decent offensive line. And obviously the Raiders front office deserves a lot of credit for keeping Derek Carr at the helm as well. So Yeah, I give them credit for that. So I feel like they're on the upswing. The Bucks, the two things that make them average, but I have a star next to them. The two indictments I have against them is the Vernon Hargraves pick and the Jameis Winston pick. Like missing on the number one overall pick knocks you down a notch. It knocks you down a notch. But they did get Tom Brady. They still have Mike Evans. Chris Godwin was a third round pick, I believe. OJ Howard's not playing, but he has a lot of potential, so I factor that in. Cameron Brate was a steal for where they got him. I don't really like the Rob Gronkowski signing, so I'm not going to really factor that in, but it was a good move, I guess, for Tom Brady. Got to factor in the AB signing as well, getting Rojo, getting Carlton Davis and Jamel Dean and Antoine Winfield and Jordan Whitehead and Edwards and these boys. That whole secondary, none of those guys are first-round picks, so I got to give them a lot of credit for building that secondary that way. Even Sean Murphy-Bunting as well, getting JPP. Getting Shaq Barrett, who was the sack leader last year and is one of the best pressure guys in the league. And even Vita Vea. I wasn't on board with the pick. I was Derwin James instead of Vita Vea, but I see how important he is to this defense. I give them a lot of credit for that. The Panthers, they're building something. They started over, but I think they have the potential to move up. Obviously, re-signing Christian McCaffrey, moving on from Cam Newton, obviously. Getting a guy like Derek Brown and then Jeremy Chin in the second round. I like those moves. DJ Moore, one of the best young receivers in the league. The Robbie Anderson signing looks good, so I give them a lot of credit for that as well. Then I look at the Titans. This one was a hard one. But like I said, with the Bucks, why I put them down is because of Marcus Mariota at 2. And even the Corey Davis pick as well. That was a top pick as well. So I had to factor those in and missing on those picks. But overall, they get credit for Ryan Tannehill, for Derrick Henry. I like the Adoree Jackson, even getting someone like Malcolm Butler. Jeffrey Simmons was a steal for where they got him as well. Who else do they have on their team? The A.J. Brown. I like that pick a lot, obviously. So They're average. I have them as average right now, but I have them as one of the star teams. So the Raiders, Bucks, Panthers, and Titans are in tier 3, but I had them start as moving up to tier 2 potentially, depending on what they do. Now to the teams that are just strictly average. Packers, haven't surrounded Aaron Rodgers with enough help, haven't given him a first-round receiver. I factor that in. Their defense, not strong up the middle, no linebackers to speak of. Yeah. Just not totally enamored. The Packers should be better than what they are to me. Just not enough resources poured into the receiver position. As far as the middle linebacker position, not enough resources. Although I do give them credit for Jair Alexander, obviously. Aaron Jones in the 5th round, I believe. Getting guys like Adrian Amos, Darius Smith, and Preston Smith improved their defense dramatically from where it was. Kenny Clark is a good draft pick. Rashawn Gary, I like him too. But I do hold some things against them because they should be better than what they are. Broncos, a lot of what makes the Broncos average is the quarterback position. I liked what they did in the draft this year as far as getting KJ Hamler, getting Noah Fant last year, getting Jerry Jeudy this year, signing Melvin Gordon, getting Glasgow, having Garrett Bowles and whatnot. But they just miss on the quarterback position too much for me to give them anything other than average. Drew Lock, Trevor Siemian, Brock Osweiler, Paxton Lynch, and these guys. No, sorry. I can't give John Elway credit for those things. Well, yeah, I give him blame for those things, which is why, he's average. Vikings, this is an interesting one as well. I give them credit for Justin Jefferson, Jeff Gladney, Cameron Dantzler, and whatnot. And getting guys like Eric Kendricks and whatnot. But you lost Stephon Diggs. Kirk Cousins, he's good but not great. Everson Griffin, aged and whatnot. Defensive tackle spot is questionable as well. You look at on offense, Irv Smith, drafted high in the first round, but hasn't been as productive. But they do get credit for the Dalvin Cook signing. So they have some star power moves that keep them average. Like Danielle Hunter, Dalvin Cook, Justin Jefferson so far, finding Adam Thielen undrafted. Those are the moves I give. Those are the moves that make them average. Seahawks kind of similarly, not factoring in Russell Wilson, but getting Jamal Adams. But the Seahawks just haven't drafted well in the first round. Overall, guys like Rashad Penny and Carson, and not enough resources invested into the offensive line. Or the defensive line, not really that good. Trade away Frank Clark, that's an indictment, or that's a strike. Getting DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, those are, good moves. Obviously getting Trey Flowers and Shaq Griffin, I like those moves as well. Quandre Diggs, trading for him, it's a good move as well. But the Seahawks just haven't had many moves to restock their roster, which is why I factor that in. Then we get to New England Patriots. They're just they've just drafted average over the last few years. Like Stephon Gilmore's been the only major signing in free agency. Other than that, it's a bunch of mediocre to good stuff. And so I don't need to highlight it. They just don't have much on their roster, which is why they look the way they look. And then the Falcons, I had them almost a step away from tier 4, really because they've missed on Takk McKinley and Vic Beasley. Those were two big indictments I had on them, but they got Calvin Ridley, Deion Jones. Keanu Neal's been injury prone, but he's a good player when he plays. Grady Jarrett, obviously, but then you lost guys like Jalen Collins in the secondary, Robert Alford in the secondary as well. And then, you also lost Austin Hooper as well. So, Falcons, they're just average. And then you overdrafted guys like A.J. Terrell and whatnot. And so it's hit or miss with the Falcons as far as that's concerned. Then we get to tier 4, which is the strictly bad teams that are drafting. Jets, they don't have any of their former first round picks from the last 6 years on the roster. Minus Quinnen Williams, but none of them got second extensions, so there's that. I don't even need to talk about the Jets in there. They're 0-9. Texans, just bad decisions across the board, trading away DeAndre Hopkins, 2 first-round picks and a second-round pick for Laramie Tunsil, no future assets. Texans just, I don't even need to highlight that anymore. Then we get to the Lions. I like DeAndre Swift. Jeff Okudah hasn't looked too well this year. But across the board, it's just been bad. Kerryon Johnson, he's okay. They lost Darius Slay for a 3rd and a 5th, an elite corner for only a 3rd and a 5th round pick. Not nearly enough. You just look at the litany of moves. Trey Flowers hasn't worked out that well. Ezekiel Ansah didn't pan out to what they thought he could be. Jared Davis didn't pan out well. So you just look at the litany of moves that they've done. It just hasn't worked out. Then we get to the Jaguars. And I thought about putting the Jaguars in average, but I couldn't because they've just lost so much talent from 2017. Jalen Ramsey gone. Yannick Ngakoue gone. Calais Campbell gone. AJ Bouye gone. Leonard Fournette gone. Ronnie Harrison gone. Got Josh Allen, so I give them credit for that, but they've just lost too much. Malik Jackson gone as well. Like, they just lost too much, so that shows that players don't want to play there. So I have to factor that in. They've lost too much elite talent. Even Allen Robinson and Allen Hurns gone, so not good. Eagles, they've missed on a lot of picks, so I don't really even need to highlight that much. Obviously, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside over DK Metcalf, Deebo Samuel, A.J. Brown, and Terry McLaurin, Deontay Johnson. There's just a litany of players they missed on. Jalen Reagor over Justin Jefferson isn't looking good so far. Mismanagement of the corner position, highest paid defensive line in the league, so bad decision-making as far as free agency. Not trading for DeAndre Hopkins or Stephon Diggs is a stripe. Drafting Jalen Hurts in the second round is a stripe. So the Eagles just got a bunch of stuff. guaranteeing Alshon Jeffrey's contract, giving Deshaun Jackson an extension once you traded for him. Just a lot of bad decisions, not enough resources invested in the linebacker position. I can go on and on, but yeah, there's that. Bears, yeah, I thought about putting them in average, but that Mitchell Trubisky over Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes, that's going to live in infamy for a while. That's a fireable offense on so many levels because they traded up to get him. So that's just bad. That's just all time bad. I like Roquan Smith. I like the trade for Khalil Mack. Obviously Akeem Hicks is good. Leonard Floyd, that didn't pan out, so that's another stripe. Eddie Jackson is good. This kid Jalen Johnson's looking good, but ultimately, yeah, they can go into tier 3, but I have them in tier 4 because those two picks, Leonard Floyd and Mr. Trubisky, those are just bad. Those are bad. And even Allen Robinson, that's a good pickup, but I had them in bad. I couldn't get over those. Giants, yeah, James Bradbury, he's a good pickup, but other than that, their offensive line, woes have continued. Nate Solder, that wasn't a good signing. Evan Ingram hasn't lived to first round pick material. Traded Odell Beckham, so I got to factor that in. Took Saquon Barkley, and he's hurt right now. That was a good pick, though. Daniel Jones, we don't know what to make of him, but he may not be worthy of the sixth overall pick. So that's still up in the air. Yeah, I'm just not really enamored by what the Giants have done. Even trading for Leonard Williams, I didn't love that either. So yeah, the Giants, they're still questionable right now. So bad. And then Washington. Yeah, Dwayne Haskins. Yeah, not looking good so far. Then their defensive line is all first round picks and whatnot, so I give them credit for that. But the Josh Norman signing didn't yield as great results as they would have liked it to yield. So that's a strike. Then you talk about the mismanagement of the quarterback position with Case Keenum and Alex Smith and Kirk Cousins. I gotta factor that stuff in there because that was a mess. Yeah, that was bad. Then I give them credit for Terry McLaurin. That's a good signing, but Brandon Scherf still here. Mismanagement of the Trent Williams situation. That's another strike. Yeah, just too many big strikes for me to give them credit for a lot of stuff. So as of right now, bad. And then you look at the Bengals. They're the only team with a star in this in tier 4 where they could go from bad to average. So obviously Joe Burrow, he's going to be a good player. T. Higgins, I like that pick. You got Joe Mixon in the second round. Obviously you got Tyler Boyd. What else do they have here? Let me see. Like William Jackson. Like Akeem Davis Gaither in the third round. Then you look at Jesse Bates. They've got some good building block pieces going forward to where I feel comfortable to say that they can be average and then move up the chain into another tier. But yeah, those are my tiers as far as the GM rankings go. Separate them into 4 tiers, like I said. So 1 being elite, 2 being, good but not great, obviously. Tier 3 being average, and then tier 4 just terrible. So those are my rankings. You guys got any problems with them? You guys got any questions about any of them or anything that I've said so far in the podcast today? As always, you can ask questions. As always, like, share, subscribe, and don't forget to share with your lovely, lovely grandma who makes that sweet potato pie. And y'all enjoy y'all Thanksgiving, man. Love from AC as always. One love. Y'all already know. Enjoy y'all Thanksgiving. Enjoy some football. Enjoy your time with your family as always. And be thankful for a lot because, hey, we still all alive. We breathing. But until then, I'll see you guys when I see you. I'm out. This is AC.